He thought defacing a hero's tomb would make him a legend. But in one impossibly fast move, the silent sentinel guarding it turned his act of desecration into a lesson that would haunt him forever. The silence in the sanctuary of the fallen wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with the weight of unspoken history and the hushed reverence of those who came to witness it. A vast expanse of manicured green sloped towards a pristine white marble plaza, where the tomb of the unknown soldier stood as a stark, sacred altar against the Virginia sky. The air, cool and clean, carried the scent of rain-washed grass and the faint, sharp tang of polished brass. On this plaza, a lone figure moved with a precision that bordered on the divine. This was Sergeant Marcus Thorne, a sentinel at the tomb. At 54, his face was a roadmap of a life lived in service, etched with lines of discipline around his eyes and mouth. He wore the Army's dress blues, the fabric a deep, reverent navy, adorned with ribbons that spoke of conflicts in deserts and mountains far from this peaceful hill. His white gloves were immaculate, his bearing arrow straight, his gaze fixed on a point beyond the living, a place only he could see. His duty was a walking meditation, a 21-step journey across a black mat. Each step was a measured beat in a symphony of remembrance. He would walk 21 steps, turn to face the tomb for 21 seconds, turn again, and repeat. The number wasn't arbitrary, it echoed the 21-gun salute, the highest honor. The click of the steel taps on his heels against the stone was the only sound he made, a metronome marking the relentless passage of time and the unyielding promise of his watch. To the tourists gathered behind velvet ropes, he was a spectacle of perfect discipline. But for Marcus, this was a conversation. With every step, he honored the men who lay beneath the marble, soldiers stripped of their names by the brutal anonymity of war. He knew their sacrifice intimately. He had felt the heat of a Kandahar sun, had held the hand of a dying brother in arms, had seen firsthand what it cost to purchase the ground on which he now walked. This post wasn't a performance, it was a penance and a privilege. He reached the end of the mat, his movements impossibly sharp. He executed a flawless turn, his M14 rifle flowing with him as if an extension of his arm. The polished wood of its stock and the gleaming chrome of its bayonet caught the morning light. For 21 seconds, he stood perfectly still, a statue carved from duty itself, his chest rising and falling in a slow, controlled rhythm. The crowd watched, mesmerized. Phones were out, but there were no selfie sticks, no loud chatter. Here, the silence commanded respect, and Marcus Thorne was its high priest. Little did he know, the sanctity of his watch was about to face its most vulgar test. The hallowed quiet was shattered not by a sound, but by a presence. 3 young men swaggered towards the viewing area, a bubble of crass energy that seemed to curdle the air around them. Leading them was Leo Martinez, who called himself Rec on his social media channels. He wore baggy jeans, a hoodie with a garish graffiti logo, and a gold chain that looked jarringly out of place. He held his phone like a weapon, live-streaming his every move to a niche audience that thrived on chaos. "Yo, check this spot out," Leo's voice sliced through the reverence, loud and abrasive. His 2 friends, a lanky kid in a backwards cap and a shorter, broader one with a vacant smirk, snickered on cue. "We're live from Boring Town, USA. And look what we got here." He flipped his phone camera around, zooming in on Sergeant Thorne, who had just begun another 21-step patrol. "Get a load of this dude. Think he gets paid by the step? Or does he just do it for the gram?" The tourists nearby shifted uncomfortably. A mother instinctively pulled her child closer. An elderly couple frowned, their disapproval a silent rebuke. But Leo was oblivious, feeding off the attention of his online viewers and the sycophantic laughter of his crew. "Bet he can't even blink," the lanky one challenged, his voice cracking with adolescent bravado. $100 says he's a robot." "Nah, man, he's real," Leo countered, inching closer to the velvet rope, his voice dripping with mock sincerity for his audience. "He's a real-life action figure. Look at the shiny buttons. Mommy must have polished those for him this morning." The taunts grew bolder. They made exaggerated marching motions, stumbling over their own feet in a pathetic parody of Thorne's disciplined grace. They whistled and catcalled, their voices echoing across the plaza. Through it all, Sergeant Thorne gave no sign he had heard them. His eyes remained fixed. His pace never faltered. The metronomic click of his heels continued its steady rhythm, a heartbeat of defiance against their rising tide of disrespect. His stoicism only enraged Leo further. This wasn't the reaction he wanted. He needed conflict. He needed his target to break. He glanced at his phone, a scowl forming as he read the comments. Some were cheering him on, but others were starting to turn. "Dude, not cool. That's a soldier. My grandpa is buried there." The criticism was fuel. He needed to escalate. He turned to his friends, a malicious glint in his eye. "This place is too quiet. Too clean." He reached into the oversized pocket of his hoodie. "I think it needs a little color. A little personality." As Leo's hand emerged from his pocket, an old man in a navy blue cap embroidered with "Vietnam Veteran" stepped forward. His back was slightly stooped by age, but his voice was iron. "That's enough, son. You're on hallowed ground. Show some respect." Leo's face lit up. A new character had entered his drama. He swung his phone towards the veteran. "Yo, check out this fossil," he announced to his stream. "Gonna give me a history lesson?" "Relax, Grandpa. We're just having some fun." "This isn't a place for fun," the veteran said, his jaw tight. "This is a place to remember the men who gave everything so you could have the freedom to act like a fool. Now, move along." The direct challenge sent a jolt through Leo. His smirk widened into a sneer. "You think you can tell me what to do? You and what army?" He gestured mockingly at Thorne. "This one. He's just a decoration." He turned his back on the veteran, his focus returning to the Sentinel with renewed venom. The intervention had pushed him over the edge. He paced along the rope, his movements agitated, his voice rising. "Hey, tin soldier. You hear that? Your boy's trying to save you. But you can't even move, can you? Trapped in your little box, walking back and forth all day. What a life." He was now directly in Thorne's path, separated only by the rope and a few feet of air. The crowd had gone from uneasy to openly hostile. Phones were still recording, but the intent had changed. They were no longer documenting a prank, they were documenting a crime in the making. Then came the object from Leo's pocket. A can of spray paint. It was a shocking, violent shade of neon green. He shook it, and the sound of the metal ball rattling inside was like a gunshot in the sacred silence. It was a declaration of war on everything the sanctuary stood for. "Watch this, fam," he said, his eyes glued to his phone screen, basking in the wave of shocked emojis flooding his live chat. He held the can up, positioning his thumb over the nozzle. "We're about to make this place famous. We're gonna give this rock some personality. It's time to get wrecked." The veteran took another step forward, his hand outstretched, but he was too slow, too far away. The moment had arrived. Time seemed to warp. As Leo's arm snapped forward, the neon green can sailed through the air, a vulgar projectile on a collision course with the sacred white marble of the tomb. A collective gasp sucked the air from the plaza. The veteran's face was a mask of horror. A child started to cry. Every phone was locked on the impending act of desecration. The can tumbled end over end, a streak of green against the blue sky, aimed squarely at the chiseled words, "Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known but to God." And then, the impossible happened. Sergeant Marcus Thorne moved. It wasn't a step or a turn. It was an explosion of pure, controlled motion. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, he broke his 21-second vigil. His body pivoted from the waist, his left hand shooting out from his rifle with the speed of a striking cobra. There was no hesitation, no thought, only the distilled essence of 1,000 hours of drill and the raw instinct of a combat veteran. His pristine white-gloved hand intercepted the can in mid-flight, just inches before it would have struck the marble. There was no fumbling, no juggling. Just a solid, definitive thump as his fingers closed around the metal cylinder. The sound, though quiet, was as loud as a cannon in the absolute silence that followed. The crowd froze. Jaws hung open. Leo's triumphant grin evaporated, replaced by a slack-jawed look of utter disbelief. The can, the instrument of his planned triumph, was now held firmly in the Sentinel's grasp. For the first time that day, Sergeant Thorne's eyes moved. They lifted from their distant focal point and locked directly onto Leo's. The vacant, ceremonial gaze was gone. In its place was something ancient and terrifyingly cold. It was the look of a man who had stared into the face of death and was utterly unimpressed by this boy's pathetic imitation of rebellion. Leo physically flinched, taking an involuntary step back. When Thorne spoke, his voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the plaza with the weight of absolute authority. It was quiet, gravelly, and sharp as shrapnel. "This ground," he began, each word precisely enunciated, "is not for your entertainment." He took a single, measured step towards the rope, the captured can held in his hand like a piece of evidence. His eyes never left Leo's. Men died to make this ground holy. They gave their names, their futures, their last breath, for the flag you stand under and the freedoms you abuse. He paused, letting the words sink in. They bought it with their blood. You thought you could deface it with a can of paint? A murmur of approval went through the crowd. Leo stammered, his phone hanging limply from his hand, the live stream forgotten. It was just a joke, man. A joke. Thorne's voice dropped even lower, yet it seemed to gain intensity. You stand there with your name on your shirt, seeking 5 minutes of fame. The men in this tomb gave up their names for an eternity of honor. You see this uniform? It is a symbol of that sacrifice. And you? You are a symbol of nothing. He held up the can. You came here to wreck something. But you are the one who is broken, son. Empty. You have desecrated nothing but your own character. As Sergeant Thorne's final words echoed across the plaza, 2 park police officers appeared, their movements calm but purposeful. They had been alerted by a discreet call from a sanctuary staff member moments before. They took in the scene, the frozen crowd, the humiliated punk, and the Sentinel, who now stood like a vengeful archangel, holding the neon green can. Is there a problem here, Sergeant? The senior officer asked, his eyes already on Leo. Before Thorne could answer, the veteran stepped forward, his voice shaking with righteous anger. A problem? This punk tried to deface the tomb. He threw this at it. He pointed at the can in Thorne's hand. I saw the whole thing. We all did. As if on cue, a wave of consensus rippled through the crowd. He's right. I have it on video, a woman called out, holding her phone aloft like a torch. Me too, another voice added. I've got it in 4K, from the moment he started harassing the Sentinel. The officers exchanged a look. This was no longer a simple matter of disorderly conduct. The senior officer turned to Leo, his professional demeanor hardening. Sir, I need you to come with me. Leo's face had turned a pasty, sickly white. His bravado had completely dissolved, replaced by a dawning, frantic terror. He looked around for his friends, but they had vanished, melting into the crowd at the first sign of real trouble. He was alone. Wait, no, it was a prank. For my channel, he pleaded, his voice thin and reedy. We can just delete the videos. The officer gave a short, mirthless laugh. Son, I don't think you understand the severity of what you just attempted. This is a national monument. That's a federal offense. He gestured to Thorne. And that is a soldier of the United States Army on active duty. You're in a world of trouble. The second officer began taking statements, starting with the veteran, who recounted every detail with military precision. Phones were already being airdropped and emailed to the officers, a digital avalanche of evidence burying Leo under the weight of his own stupidity. As the officers placed Leo's hands behind his back, the metallic click of handcuffs echoed Thorne's earlier footsteps. It was the sound of consequence. As he was led away, head bowed in shame, his wreck hoodie seemed like a cruel joke. He hadn't wrecked the sanctuary, he had wrecked his life. Sergeant Thorne watched them go, his expression unreadable. Then, with a fluid motion, he secured the paint can inside his uniform belt, shifted his rifle back to its ceremonial position, and resumed his post. He turned, faced the tomb for 21 seconds, and began his silent, solemn walk once more. The metronome had started again. The watch had not been broken. Within hours, the incident exploded online, but not in the way Leo had dreamed. The viral videos weren't from his stream, they were from the dozens of tourists who had captured his humiliation. The narrative was unanimous: disrespect meets discipline, Tomb Sentinel's perfect response to vandal, this is what real honor looks like. News networks picked it up, playing the slow-motion clip of Thorne's impossible catch on a loop. Military analysts appeared on TV, breaking down the biomechanics of the movement, the economy of motion, the years of training crystallized into a half-second of perfection. What you're seeing is not just a soldier catching a can, one retired general explained. You're seeing the physical embodiment of a promise, that this ground will be protected, always. Leo Martinez's online empire crumbled. Sponsors dropped him, his followers fled, and his social media channels were flooded with a tidal wave of revulsion. He was charged with the attempted desecration of a national monument, a federal felony that carried a hefty prison sentence. The court of public opinion had already convicted him. He had sought infamy and achieved it in the worst way possible. Back at the sanctuary, Sergeant Marcus Thorne received a quiet commendation in a private ceremony. True to form, he was humble and deflective. I performed my duty, he stated simply. Any sentinel would have done the same. The neon green spray paint can was entered into evidence, but there were talks of it one day being displayed at the Regimental Museum, a permanent reminder of the day dignity stared down profanity and didn't even blink. The story became a new piece of lore at the tomb. Tour guides now quietly point out the spot where it happened. Parents use the tale to teach their children a lesson that goes beyond history books, a lesson about character, integrity, and the quiet strength it takes to guard what is sacred. The silence at the sanctuary of the fallen is still heavy, but now it's filled with a new echo, the story of the sentinel who caught a can of paint and, in doing so, upheld the honor of generations. What would you have done if you witnessed this? It's a powerful reminder that the most important traditions are protected not just by soldiers, but by the respect we all choose to show. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and please, always comment with respect for the topic and each other. If this story of honor resonated with you, like and subscribe for more tales of true character.